Sure, my computer says 7:30. I'm not sure
Oh, no, if it
where
says
that time is
7:30, my
coming
clock,
from.
my watch might be off. Yep, as a matter of fact, my phone, which is better, says 7:30, so we can begin. And tonight,
Sure.
we don't have a countdown tonight because although it's being recorded, we don't have Milton Cable Access TV with us tonight. So we'll just begin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 11th, 2023 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Select Board to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town Bylaw, which governs wetlands as well. Two issues of formality. The first is we invite everyone to speak, but ask that you do identify yourself for the record. And secondly, we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan. Hans
Van Leen, Commission member.
Steve?
Steve Ibis, Conservation Agent.
Arthur?
Arthur Doyle, member.
Todd?
Todd Hamilton, member.
And I'm scanning the screen here. Is Tom Palmer on board?
I have
I
not
don't
seen
see
him come
him.
in.
Okay, well, we do have a quorum, so let's begin. And to start with, we'll go through the agenda very quickly and tell you which ones have been continued by prior request and or agreement. First on the list is number 2, notice of intent at 37 Trout Brook Avenue. That will be continued until the August meeting. And Steve, can you help me on the date for August?
The date is August 8th.
All right,
Yes,
August
August
8th.
8th.
Perfect. Next, I'm not sure if this is being continued, but number 4 is a request for certificate of compliance at 175 Governor Stoughton Lane. Kathy Bowen informed me this morning that she had received nothing from the applicant, and it's my understanding, and I'll have to defer to others because I've recused myself from this case, but it's my understanding that there was a request from the commission for additional information. Is that correct?
Hello?
It wasn't additional information. It was information that needed to be
I
provided.
cannot hear anybody. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can, Todd. We can hear you. But you can't hear us? Todd, if you can see, use your telephone if you would.
And Tom Palmer is coming in right now.
Oh, perfect.
So that's good.
Yeah, so John, the request is for the applicant to provide information on the survival rate of the plantings.
Exactly.
All right, so having received no information from them as requested, then we'll continue that until August 8th as well, correct? All right, next,
Yes.
notice of intent at 114 Hillside Street, which is number 7. I know that we did request additional information from them, and Kathy told me we have received nothing. Unless anyone knows differently, then we'll continue that until such time as we receive the revised plans.
And we might ask Brad Holmes, who is on tonight. Brad, do you have any further information from that particular site to update us with?
I'm sorry, I was tuning out. What was the site?
It's 114
It's
Hillside
one-
Street, Brad.
I don't have any information on that. I haven't been involved since we reviewed the site together on that Saturday morning to look at the wetland lines, but I can reach out and find out where they're at and provide the commission with an update.
That's great, Brad. Thank you for your courtesy in doing that. So we'll continue number 7 until August 8th. And then we have number 8, request for determination of applicability Brush Hill Lane and 0 Milton Avenue in Boston. I believe there was a request for continuance, but if there is anyone with other information, please speak up. I see none, so we'll continue that one until.
There's a hand raised, John.
Oh, there is. Tom Schultz? Shoots.
Yep, I'm here from Goddard Consulting on behalf of the applicant for that project for the request
Oh.
for determination of applicability.
All right, perfect, Tom. Thanks. We'll put you back in line. So that's
Absolutely.
address that tonight. Next, 9 and 10 go together. That's 1259 Brush Hill Road, Lot C, and 1259 Brush Hill Road, Lot D. Those are both being continued until August 8th. And I think everything else we should begin.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
number 11 was taken care of at the last meeting. That's a carryover, I believe.
Oh, it is. Okay. We can report, I can report on 3 of our applications to community under additional business. And you may be able to report on the 4th to come, I guess, Arthur. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, we can do that under additional business. That takes us back to number 1. Request for certificate of compliance, Unquity Road and Canton Avenue. That's the dam project. Sean, do you have that?
Yes.
Perfect. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Just tell us where we are and what you see. I know you're seeking a certificate of compliance, but can you tell us where we are and who has supported that which we look for in a certificate of compliance, which is an attestation of compliance with the order of conditions?
Yeah. So apologies that this is my first one doing one of these. So the order of conditions is for 3 portions of Pine Tree Brook. So the removal of the dam at Canton Ave, the widening of the dam at Harling's Mill, and the removal of flashboard at the Harlan Street flood control dam. And GZA and Maverick Construction completed the dam removal last year in June. The Canton Ave Dam, which was the completion of the remaining parts of this project. Sorry, I'm not.
Okay, we've got your report along with some photographs. But can you just tell us when it was completed and your view on whether or not it was done appropriately? We have the report
Yes.
in which
Okay.
GTA through Chad Cox has actually given the attestation which we require.
Right. Okay. So I believe the completion was June 15th of last year. I can double check the date. For some reason, it's not pulling up. And in my view, it does meet the order of conditions. I will say that just in terms of the broader scope, NEPR has interest in some future riparian replanting along Pine Tree Brook, but no immediate plans to pursue that. But it does seem like that it would be worthwhile in the future.
Well, that's outside the scope of.
Yeah,
what
that is
you're
outside the
seeking
scope.
tonight, though, correct?
Correct.
And this is, it's the applicant for the public's benefit is actually Neponset River Watershed Association. But this is it a NEPRA project or is it in coordination with DCR or how does that work?
So, and I apologize, I've this project started before my time at the Neponset River Watershed Association, but the order of conditions covers 3 separate projects on Pine Tree Brook, 2 of which were led by NEPRA, and one of which DCR owned the former dam at Canton Ave. And so the removal was done in coordination with DCR leading the way, when they contracted out the engineering and removal.
All right, and I know that as part of the plan, there was a pre-construction meeting, and I think, Steve, you were present at that. Can you
Yes.
tell us what went on?
Regarding the reconstruction
Yes,
or the,
just what happened
work
in real
project.
simple terms, if they Move the bank,
Yes,
took
in
the stones out of the way.
pre-construction. Exactly. They set up a pump around inside a dumpster that had a good bottom, no leaks in the bottom. Set up a pump around through the culvert underneath Canton Ave and attached the outflow to a tree actually along the bank, and the outflow itself was directed to a large concrete structure that was in the brook. So there was no problem with turbidity from the outflow, and they did that very well. They they kept that going for the length of the time that they actually took and used the machine to chip away at the dam itself. And it worked just fine. And that's all I think I need to say for that project.
It is. So do you agree with GCA's representation here in the report to us dated June 30th, 2022, and signed by Chad W. Cox, professional engineer, principal in charge, that, and I'm quoting here, is GCA's opinion that the removal of the Pine Tree Brook Reservoir Dam was accomplished in general accordance with the plans, specifications, and permit conditions of the project. GCA considers the dam decommissioned. Agree?
Yes, I agree entirely.
All right. And now, Sean, can you tell me if the other two projects, is there a similar completion in compliance with any permits?
Yeah. So the other two projects are in completion, are complete in accordance with the order of conditions. So just as a quick summary, it's the removal of a flashboard at the flood control dam. The flashboard was removed. The water drained. That impoundment drained down, and the Harlings Mill Dam breach was widened in accordance with the order conditions.
All right.
And I'd say
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. I'm sorry.
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. Any questions from commissioners? Hearing none. Any questions from?
Quick comment.
Yes, there is a comment. Where?
Yeah, just for me, it's Hans. One, I think there's a note in the chat about somebody trying to get into the meeting. I just want to make sure I flag that if there's anyone else in the waiting room. Secondly, as someone that's familiar with in-water work, so, work inside a stream, this contractor did an excellent job. Just want to make sure that the NEPRA folks get that, pass along that kudos if possible, because they did that very effectively.
That's good news.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I want to second Hans' comment. I did visit the site with work in progress, and I was extremely impressed with the diligence and care that was taken. It was very impressive.
That's all good news. Thank you, Sean. And
could I point something out?
Yeah, Tom.
I have a request for certificate of compliance of Form 8A from DEP, and it says the project is at Unkley Road in Canton Ave, and it's submitted by Ian Cook of NEPRA.
Yes.
And it doesn't mention the other two dams. So I think there's a question in my mind: are we approving a certificate for one dam or three dams?
Well, the attestation from GCA is actually limited to Canton Avenue and Unquity Road. And that's why I asked Sean, Tom Palmer is right. And we don't want to be, assert form over substance here, but he is correct. And just for record keeping purposes, we'd need to have the Form 8A actually refer to the others. I don't think there'll be an issue. But it may well be that we could either do this just sort of in the matter of course at the August meeting for the other two projects. This one sounds to be pretty easy and straightforward for the dam that I'm familiar with it. And Arthur, I just saw it on July 4th. I was there looking at it on Tuesday the 4th. But I mean, is there a sense, can you get another form to us or a revised form, Sean, that would actually show the other two projects?
Yes, I can do that.
All right, well, why don't we vote for this one? Unless there's a comment from members of the public or abutters. Then seeing none, why don't we vote for this one to approve the certificate of compliance for the Canton Avenue, Unquity Road dam decommissioning, and then defer until August until we get an actual request for the other two projects as well. Does that make sense? I don't think it'll be time consuming and we can get through it pretty fast, but we do need to have a record. Tom Palmer, you're correct on that. So is there a motion to approve this certificate of compliance for the dam decommissioning at Canton Avenue and Unquity Road?
So moved.
All
One
right,
second. John seconded.
all right, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Hans, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right, Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Todd, you're on mute. We can't hear you. You're still on mute.
Yes.
Yes, thanks, Todd. Tom Palmer, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, am I missing anybody? Seeing none?
Did you vote, John?
What's that?
Did you vote, John?
John?
No, I am. I vote yes as well, John Kim. So that's unanimous, Sean. You've got your certificate of compliance, and we look forward to seeing you in August very briefly, and ask Kathy to put you on at the front of the agenda. We just get you in and out quickly.
All right, great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Second on the agenda, yes? The second on the agenda is number 3, which is notice of intent 1365 Canton Avenue. Brad, do you have that one?
Yes, I do. Marion McKittrick is here. I'll let her present and jump in where I need to. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we had a site walk for this property with full color plans, but you didn't have a quorum, so you couldn't take a vote. But we did answer a number of questions, discussed a condition requiring, I believe it was 5 inches of loam. Sabri or Brad, if you remember for sure, that's what I ended up with in my notes, that was a change from the proposed 3 inches in the area to be, landscaped. So I have nothing new to add. There is an email on file with the commission from the neighbor immediately adjacent to the left, who has agreed to allow Sabri Torquay to do this work, which is one edge of it is on his property, where Sabri has to change the grade of the hill there and do some more landscaping and remove rocks. So I don't really have anything to add. And not everybody was there at the site walk. I'm not sure if you might have questions or whether you need us to put a plan up.
Marion, my memory is in complete conformance with yours. I think we did go to 5 inches on the loam. And I think that you're correct that we would have voted on site at a public meeting, but for the fact we didn't have a quorum. Tom, any other thoughts? You were there.
I was pleased with the plan, which includes areas near the resource areas. The innermost will be restored with woody vegetation, then an outer one, which will be restored with herbaceous. And only then do you get to the lawn. But it's a big backyard, so there's quite a bit of lawn as well. It's my understanding there'll be a condition in the order saying the plan dictates how much shall be lawn. And that was fine with me.
All right, good. Any other questions from commission members? And my memory also was that the demarcation of the resource area was going to be done by birdhouses, correct?
Correct.
All right, good idea.
And
Any other questions or comments from members of the public, abutters first, and then members of the public?
Mr. Chairman, I think some of the boulders were going to be used for demarcation as well, in addition to the birdhouses. We had some discussion about that. I don't remember what the exact resolution was.
I
But I was
thought
very pleased to see that the property lines were all taken care of and they're going to be straightened out for clarity on this property.
I remember that discussion, Brad. Do you recall? I thought, or Sabri, I know that he's going to try to use the boulders on site. He's would much prefer to use them further up away from this area. I don't know whether the owner was I guess what we said was we thought that the birdhouse demarcation was a satisfactory way of doing it, but the question was, if they fell down after a few years or something like that. Do you remember, Brad, any more discussion, what we decided?
I wasn't involved in the placement or the discussion of using some of the boulders to be relocated along the edge of the lawn. The birdhouses are proposed to be on cedar posts and then plaques installed on the birdhouses so that they're, a more functioning conservation marker. I think that would be enough if the commission needs or thinks that the boulders would be needed in addition, we could do that, but I know we were proposing to remove the boulders from the jurisdictional area.
Right, the Marion's comments about relocation elsewhere on the property are spot on. I thought the commentary on boulders was that they would be between the plantings and the pasture. And we also wanted to make sure that the quote pasture, close quote, would be mowed, so that would be a condition as well.
Right.
Wasn't many, we just talked about, if I remember correctly, or it was mentioned that maybe just a couple of boulders along that line.
Yeah, I recall the discussion as well, but I didn't think we had imposed a condition. Any other thoughts, Hans? Were you present or not?
I was not, and I apologize for that. So I unfortunately don't have input to provide there.
It was mentioned, but I don't think there was any conclusion, so I agree with you, John.
Yeah, Tom, do you have any feeling on that? I'm comfortable with either one of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm all right with it. I mean, the plan says what areas shall be what. And however they're demarcated, I don't really need that, but I do need the plan showing that the certain area will not become law. And we did get that.
Right. Well, I'm Arthur. I don't really have a feeling one way or the other. I'm comfortable with either one. If you feel, strongly that the condition should be boulders, or maybe we can intersperse them, or do some of each. I'm comfortable with the plan.
I'm not. That's trying. We just wanted to make sure that over time that the pasture remained as such.
I think the birdhouses are a good idea as well.
Yeah,
And,
we
it
could
is
do
true. Yeah. It's so, as Arthur says, that if you don't do it, there's a temptation to just incorporate that area into the lot.
That's true. So maybe we could suggest that the condition of the distinction between the manicured lawn and the hayfield, so to speak. And I know you said mowed, but for the public's benefit, mowed doesn't mean that you're cutting the grass every 3 days. It means you do it, what, Tom, twice?
Once a year or twice a year.
Yeah, usually once in the fall and once in the spring.
Yeah, so we could just make that a condition, and that line of delineation shall, be in perpetuity. Or it's an ongoing condition rather than using the word perpetuity.
That's fine.
All right, so with that, are you okay with birdhouses, Arthur?
Always.
Okay. All right, Todd, any thoughts?
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay, and I see no questions or comments from abutters. So can we have a motion to issue the order of conditions according to the plans, which we've actually seen and been there on at least two occasions at public meeting. And the plan seems to conform with protection of the resources. So I would invite a motion to issue the order of conditions with the extra conditions that we've spoken of today, including the birdhouse delineation of the mowed area as opposed to the manicured lawn area. Is there such a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion? Hearing none. Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Todd, how do you vote?
Yeah, yes.
Tom Palmer, how do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
And I vote yes, John Kiernan as well. So that's unanimous. You've got your order of conditions. Marion, thank you. Brad, thank you. And Sabri, thank you as well. I see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I do
members of the
have- I do
commission.
have just a brief request, which is that I have a June 27th hearing with the Board of Appeals on movement of fill. And I'm really hoping that I have an actual written order of conditions before then that I can give the board. I certainly can report that you took your vote and I have the plan. But if there's any way to actually issue the written order, that would be really helpful.
All right, Marion, a good point, and I understand that would be of assistance with the other town boards. So we will endeavor to get that signed this week.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Particularly with,
Thank you.
John, particularly with the change in staffing at the DPW office.
Yeah, you're right. Kathy will be with us until what, the 21st, I think. I talked to her today and she told me the date, 23rd, perhaps. It's in the early 20s anyway, so we will have to do it, Marion. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble. We'll all be in trouble. So we'll move that along.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda, we're skipping 175 Governor and Stoughton, so we go to notice of intent, 25 Guile Road, Lower Guile Field, and number 6, informational 25 Guile Road, Grass for Guile. Those are combined. And I think the most efficient way to address this case is to get the public and the stakeholders completely up to date. First, for the public's benefit, we've received a tremendous amount of material from both proponents and opponents. And I should comment that on this one, everybody's on the side of the angels. I mean, some people are pushing for the field on behalf of the children in athletic endeavors. And others are pushing for the health of the same children. So everybody is well motivated. There's a tremendous amount of material. Just so that the public is aware, what we have done is we have sought the the Conservation Commission has sought the assistance of, initially we were going to go simply to Tetra Tech to seek hydrological analysis and an environmental chemist analysis. And I did speak with Sean Reardon at Tetra Tech. And in fact, he indicated that it might be a broader scope of work than I had initially expected. Additionally, the commission members themselves have added to the scope of work significantly. So what I did is I consulted with town council, and he told me that
On the
if the
topic,
cost estimate,
we're number 8.
Where is he at?
can you put that on mute, Mona Lisa? Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thanks. So town council told us that if it's a narrow scope of work and we can anticipate something below $10,000 in terms of cost, that can be done on the basis that you've got a reputable source, as Tetra Tech is. However, if the cost exceeds $10,000, then the municipal bid law kind of kicks in. It's done in phases. So as our scope expanded with the questions that were posited by the commission members, that the cost went up above that. So what we did is we had to, and I did have an initial discussion with Tetra Tech to provide these services to us in June. But since then, the scope has expanded. And at this juncture, we have now submitted the request for proposal to, I hope I get this right. I've got them written down, but it's Tetra Tech, it's GZA, it's a company called AECom, and that was suggested by Steve Ivis as a potential bidder on this because they've done work, same kind of work at the Naval Air Station in Weymouth and the contamination and remediation done there. We also reached out to Scott Horsley, who's a highly qualified hydrologist, although not in the arena of environmental chemistry. And we also reached out to Michael Mobile, who is the president of McDonald Morrissey, which is a firm that's provided other hydrological analysis for some town projects. So we've got essentially 5 requests for a proposal out there. Now, I recognize that's going to slow the process down. And that's why actually at the June meeting, and I can't remember who I asked, and Kevin, it wasn't you, but I think it was, how long is this going to take to actually construct? And I believe the answer was that it can't be constructed for the fall season anyway. And I don't say that in a blithe manner whatsoever, but rather I don't think slowing it down to get the appropriate consultancy in place is going to change the construction schedule. In addition, and this was a factor, and I discussed this with Tetra Tech as well, everybody, I think all stakeholders anticipate that both EPA and DEP are going to change their numbers. Hopefully by August. The public comment period started, I believe, at the beginning of June. It might even have been May, and it usually runs 60 days. And the agencies, both federal and state, await the conclusion of the public comment period before they implement their new regs. Whoever we get as a consultant and whatever analysis done, we want it to be done on the new figures. And the figures I'm talking about are numbers, basically. They're the health index and or the hazard index that we see in flux right now. So I think it's appropriate and rational for us to at least stall until August. And when I say stall, that's probably the wrong word. I think we should await the change in numbers that I do anticipate in August. In any event, we won't have the plan in place until August because the select board has to approve, and town council has to approve the contract with whichever consultant we use. So, and I know I don't mean to talk too much, but what I'd like to do is give you the list of scope questions, which I just put down, if you can hang on a minute. The commission has contributed from different commission members to the following questions. Number one, whether the presence of PFAS or PFOS in the proposed plastic materials of the artificial turf will adversely impact the nearby Pine Tree Brook and or the adjacent BVW. The analysis should include the potential for micro shedding of plastic fibers from the field surface. And that's A. B is any chemical contamination from the adhesives used in connecting the sections of the surface matting, the surface mat itself, or the bedding beneath the surface layer by means of one, water sheet flow, or by water draining through the pervious top layer, which is designed to capture to be captured in the ridge drains beneath the field surface. So we do remember from Chris Huntress presenting the design plan, and it did show, I think, pretty effective ridge drains for the field. But that water will be accumulated into one drain, eventually one drain pipe, and then eventually discharge into the nearby Pine Tree Brook. So we need to see, what's going into that water. Number two, if such contamination is probable, can the impact be quantified so as to measure the adverse impact compared to ambient levels of PFAS and PFOS, because they're everywhere to some extent anyway. So we want to be able to see whether or not there's an incremental load of contamination or if it's coming in under the ambient levels. Now, that's to be measured in both liquids in adjacent waterways, including Pine Tree Brook, and the surrounding soil levels. So we do need some expertise in terms of how do you meld soil levels with liquid levels because of the dilution factor. Number three, if there is a net increase in contamination levels, is it cumulative or will it degrade and dissipate over time, including dilution in the adjacent waterways? That's Pine Tree Brook. And there's also standing water in the resource area next to the field. Next, can any contamination captured in the drainage system be mitigated by installing a filtration system prior to the water entering Pine Tree Brook? And we do know that some municipalities and some private water providers, I know there's one in Merrimack up in New Hampshire, they've installed the filtration systems to take the PFAS out of the water. So it can be done. It can be done at a household level. It can be done at a municipal water service level. Could be expensive, but it can be done. So we want to know whether or not, if there is a load, can we get rid of it before it enters into Pine Tree Brook? Next, 5. Does the organic wood-based bedding of the field contain any wood preservatives that have the potential for migration into Pine Tree Brook? That is, if it's pine, I know it's organic, which is great because we're getting away from plastic, but we're just checking to see if there's any kind of a chemical preservative that's used in the wood, because the wood will degrade a whole lot faster than plastic. So we just wanted to double check on that. 6, what is the potential field service temperature on the water that discharges into Pine Tree Brook? And will that affect Pine Tree Brook temperatures and ultimately impact the Neponset River temperature? And will that potential change adversely impact the cold water fisheries? Now, the next question is related directly to that, and that is, if that were to happen, can we just slow the water down, detain it, let it sit before it's discharged to cool back to its ambient temperature, its regular temperature? So that is a factor. So even if it did adversely affect the Pine Tree Brook, if it was discharged immediately, can we mitigate that so that it doesn't? And I think that's a pretty simple proposition. Next, 8 is, do licensed site disposal facilities currently exist to allow the town to safely recycle the plastic turf materials? I know that's a matter of controversy and it might be changing even as we speak. 9, if the field needs to be removed, that is the plastic mat of the field, if it needs to be removed and replaced in the future, will there remain any residual contamination under the field? So that, in 10 years or 12 or 14 years, if the top layer is removed, do we have a bed or a soil base that's contaminated? And if so, what do we do about it? Can we get rid of that? And the last one is, what are the appropriate EPA and DEP hazard and or health indices to be utilized in our analysis? And that's one of the main reasons for waiting at least until August to get that information. Now, I know I'm just giving you words right now. It's all written down. The proposals have gone out to those 5 potential bidders, and they're all professional. So we expect, I know I did talk to Tetra Tech, and he said he's going to be working on it this week. So I don't expect there to be any delay in the return on the request for proposals. I know I just gave you a lot, and it's easier to read than remember what I just said about the 10 questions. But those letters are part of the public record. And you can see that. You can get a copy from Kathy Bowen at the DPW office, or somebody at the DPW office, if she changes her position. So that's kind of a long-winded way of getting into, I don't think we're going to make much progress today, because the commission has indicated at our last meeting and continues to indicate that we need some professional guidance on these issues. They're legitimate issues, and all of the stakeholders, I think, are well-intentioned. And I think we're kind of joining together and moving in the right direction to see if we can get some of these questions answered. having said all that, let me go to Kevin or Chris. I'm looking for Chris Huntress. I don't see him. Kevin, you are, I guess, officially the applicant. So do you have any suggestions or comments or questions on this course of action?
Chris will be on this a little bit later. Is it going to go out to bid now, or are we waiting till August till?
No, it's out.
Oh, it's out. Okay.
It's out. And the RFP is in email form, but I sent copies to Kathy Bowen at the office, so you'll be able to read those questions, which is probably easier than listening to me. But essentially, you know what we're looking for. Are we adding to a contamination load? If we are, can it be mitigated? That's the chemical side. On the temperature side, are we adding to the heat of the adjacent waterway? And if so, can we mitigate it? The third big area is, what do we do with the contamination? Either if we have to replace the mat, or if any contamination migrates into the soils beneath it. Do we have a situation where we have to, and not just replace the mat, but do we have to clean the fill beneath it? Those are fair questions. So those would be the three areas, even though I gave you 10 separate questions there. They all kind of coalesce into those three silos of data that we've requested.
So will this be, I don't know, voted on or agreed upon in August of any of these companies to do this?
Oh, sure. We should have, which professional entity is able to do it. And to be blunt, I gave you two names. One was Michael Mobile and the other one was Scott Horsley, both highly accomplished hydrologists, which is part of the area that we need assistance in. But the second area is environmental chemistry. And I don't know that they have the capacity for that. I do know that Tetra Tech does. I know that GZA does. And Steve, you can help me, but the principal at AECOM, who did the work at the Weymouth Air Station, I believe she or her company has the capacity to provide that as well. But we need guidance in both areas.
Yes, and John, that's correct. They've done all the investigations, PFAs, PFOs, on the Naval Air Station for probably the past decade or so. So they've been looking at it for a long time.
All right. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach here. We're looking for, is it there? And secondly, if it is there, can we get rid of it? Can we mitigate the problem? Can we remediate the problem and still go forward with the field? So I know that's probably a lot to digest, but again, Kevin, I didn't know if you wanted to weigh. I'm Kevin Chisholm is who I'm referring to. Or if you want us to stall and wait for Chris Huntress, we can come back to this. We've got a couple. It's not a long agenda tonight. We've had some continuances. So
he said he'd be on around 8:15. He wasn't doing a presentation or anything, but if you had technical questions for him, that would be great.
Yeah, I just like to get his response. And some of the stuff is pretty simple when you boil it all down. If the water's too hot, can we cool it off before it enters? And I don't mean to refrigerate it. I just mean hold it back, put it in a detention chamber, just like we do for excess, sheet flow. They hold it back so that the discharge slows down. And if you slow it down enough, it could probably cool off enough to get back to its, regular water temperature. That would be one. The second one is, can you filter it? I know the answer is yes, but I don't know the size of the filtration system, and it could be expensive. I know it could be done at a household level. One of my daughters who lives up in New Hampshire just did it in her home, and that was not cost prohibitive. But that's a home as opposed to If it's an industrial sized one, I know that Steve has some experience on that, and that can be pretty costly. So again, it would have to relate to the amount of water that we're trying to filter. Todd, you have any experience, or Hans, you may have some experience in this area.
Yeah, filtering water can be a large quantity, very expensive. Not a simple task.
Hans, any thoughts? You're on mute. I don't know if you're saying anything or not.
The systems that I've had any interaction with or knowledge of are several $1 million. So it's not the type of these are drinking water systems. So they're not the same as central believe. So
I'm sorry, they're not the same as what?
They're drinking water systems. They're not. I don't think it's this. I think it's a different type of system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have to put it to drinking water standards. I'm just interested in not having a net impact, a net negative impact. That's the key. We don't want to make anything worse than the earth already exists. And we know that there is some in the soil, it's already there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to figure out the volume, John, to figure out what they can do for filtration.
Oh, I think that's already done. That's part of, and that might be a Kevin Huntress question. But I think they've done the calculations. That's what those ridge drains are designed to do, to capture the water,
Right.
put it into a single pipe before discharge into the brook. So I think the calculations have already been done. But that, you're right, that would then trigger the cost analysis as to whether or not that could be accomplished or not.
Yeah.
John, from a simplistic point of view, the residential system that you said that the relative New Hampshire, is that just an inline system, or does that require like an RO system that requires a supplemental pump, or does it is that so?
You got me. I don't know. I think there is a pump involved, right? Because they have a separate chamber.
Yeah.
When you,
it's not just like a piece of cheesecloth over the faucet. It has its own. It's almost like a water tank.
Yeah. So I mean, those systems in general, makes a stormwater, something supporting a stormwater system somewhat complicated, because stormwater systems don't have moving parts typically. So to add a pump or a treatment system, that would have to be managed on top of that. I'm guessing it's going to be complicated, but I don't have any specific information to support that.
Right. Well, that's why it's in the scope of work.
Yeah.
That's where we need, and I sure don't have those answers, but that's why I think a number of commissioners have posed questions, and I gathered them all and put it into the request for proposal. Why don't we do this? Because I think, hearing from Chris would be important. If we can just put this one on hold and just keep moving. We don't have any, I think, complicated ones. We've got some quick ones, I think, to go through. And we don't have anybody for number 8. That's, oh no, we do. We actually do. Why don't we move on to number 8? If that's okay with commission members and Kevin and Paul, I see you there. I don't mean to pick on you, Paul, but I know you've been a spokesperson. So with your permission, while we wait for Kevin Huntress to arrive, why don't we move to number 8?
John, do we think that Chris is going to be here fairly soon? Because we have a little presentation that we wanted to give, and we could just do that now. And if Chris is going to be here soon, that maybe he shows up during that.
Well, what do you mean by a presentation? I mean, we've had a couple of meetings on this already. I think the questions have already been posited for us, and that's why we're reaching out for help.
Right.
Is this just more of the same?
No,
I'm not denigrating.
I understand that. But earlier you were talking about in one of the early sessions, you were talking about you were interested in some kind of comparative analysis of turf and grass, and we've gone back and forth about some of the costs a little bit. But we wanted to bring in somebody from a nonprofit called the Field Fund, which is based in Martha's Vineyard. And what they do, they've had some significant success in managing some fields there. They have a thoughtful, data-driven kind of process that allows for intensive use while minimizing injuries, rainouts, irrigation, and synthetic inputs. And I was going to introduce this person so she could talk a little bit about the economic and technical aspects of fields that are managed this way, grass fields that are managed this way.
Well, I'm not sure that's within the scope of our jurisdiction. I understand that might be something that would be highly valuable to both the Park Commission and the DPW actually. But we're looking at environmental impacts, and cost is only a factor to the extent that it's prohibitive of a project. But I'm not sure that's going to help us in our decision making.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. What I was thinking though was that, so through this process, for the first time, I had the opportunity to read the town's wetlands bylaw, and I found it a really remarkable document because obviously it gives the commission a tremendous amount of latitude, not just to ensure the projects won't damage wetlands, water, and the surrounding environment, but essentially won't change them. And so it seems to me that some part of what's going on here is we're looking at risk as part of a broader cost benefit kind of consideration. So it just seems like on its face, there's less risk in grass and plastic. So if there's a grass option that offers much or all the benefits of artificial turf with much less risk, it seems like sensible to learn something about it.
John, one thing, and I don't mean to interject, but Mr. Huntress at the previous meeting, I believe, did present an alternatives analysis, and part of that was the I guess what he called the no build alternative, and I believe we can check the record on this, that part of that was cost and labor to say that alternative was less preferred or infeasible.
Less preferred, I think, is beyond the scope of our jurisdiction. If it's not feasible, and that's why I said if it's cost prohibitive, then it becomes a factor for us, that if you can't do it. But if there are,
I think this would speak to the
I just hesitate to
justification.
get into a Park Commission kind of issue as to how do you save money on fertilizer and whatever.
It's not, but John, I think it's not just a money issue. I think what we're talking about is we're talking about sort of relative risk and safety issues. If we don't, if we're, obviously when we do this, we're trying to look at mitigating factors, and we're trying to take a look at risk. And obviously there is, I think, some agreement that there will be some risk involved, more so than if you just have grass there. And so I think while certainly you're not going to make your decision based on this, I think that it would not be a bad thing to have a little information on the possibility of being able to install an alternative that would give you playing time that's close to the kind of playing time that you want with plastic without the risk. I mean, obviously you're not going to make your decision based on this, but it seems like something that would be sort of in the back of the commission's mind when they're trying to weigh all these factors. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, obviously, we're looking at a whole series of risk factors that are involved in the surrounding environment and the context.
Right. How long is this presentation, Paul? I just don't want to get sidetracked.
No, I understand, John. I understand. We're talking like 5 or 10 minutes, I think.
All right. 10 minutes it is, but when the 10 minutes arrives, we're gonna pull the plug. All right, go.
All right. Well, let me introduce the person who's going to speak. This person's name is Darty Slavin. She's one of the founders of the Field Fund. As I think I've mentioned them already, that they're founded with a goal of proving it was possible to foster healthy, durable, organically maintained grass fields. Darty has a doctorate in chiropractic and is a longtime athlete and coach, having played field hockey and ice hockey while an undergrad math major at Connecticut College. And she's also served as a field hockey and lacrosse coach on the college level and as a soccer and ice hockey coach in youth leagues. So Darty, I turn it over to you right now. Darty, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here. Great. Okay, so let me get going here. I'd love to share my screen if that's okay.
Dottie, just be aware of the time constraints. Okay?
Yep, I'm gonna do the best I can. All right. So,
No, do more than
okay.
that.
I will make it happen.
Thank you.
Right, so, thanks again, Paul. I just want to say that, so I'm here from Martha's Vineyard, and it seems like a lot of our communities are having a similar discussion these days. And so just to give you a really quick background, as Paul said, so we were founded amidst this ongoing debate on the vineyard on whether or not to install a plastic field at the regional high school. That field also was designed by Chris Huntress. And I just want to say that most recently, the permit for that field was denied by the Oak Bluffs Planning Board over environmental pollution concerns. The regional high school committee is now suing to overturn their decision, but the more we learn, the more we continue to support our opposition of these plastic fields. So with that debate, we wanted to look at how did we get to this point? And I think it's probably how you guys got to this point. And so we felt it was really important to acknowledge that a lot of our fields are in poor condition and that many towns are not taking care of their fields with tight school budgets and municipal budgets. And so we wanted to look at what we could do to fix that. And a lot of the times the conversation immediately turns to fields are underperforming, see, we need a plastic field. But there are 100 things we can do before turning to that plastic field and converting this nice grass environment to pavement and plastic. So what can we do? These are all the things that we always hear, right? But we wanted to take a look at those myths and refrains about the problems of playing fields, and we wanted to challenge those talking points and see if grass fields were actually attainable. So we currently maintain 6 fields across the island, and they each are different size, use, constraints. They all have different expectations for their performance. And we understand that our growing conditions are different than your growing conditions, and we understand that one size does not, one size fits all approach doesn't work here. So one of our areas is the West Tisbury School, which has 3 fields. This is kind of the main field with our highest use. It's for gym, recess, a school of 360 kids. It's used for rec soccer, island lead soccer, which is the older kids, some travel soccer with junior high and high school kids. And that field is in use 6 days a week, all spring and all fall. It's also used over the summer for soccer clinics. It's open to the general public for use.
Dottie, do you know if you measure that by hours? Because I've heard hours as a
You know,
factor.
as you said that, I had meant to add that, and I can find that out for you guys for sure. Yep. So each of our fields has some different constraints. They're the playground field at the West Tisbury School is near a wellhead, and so we cannot use any fertilizer or other amendments on it, but it is irrigated. And then we have the town field, which just this week, through a grant from CPC, got irrigation. So you can see here that the irrigation is being put in. And when I drove by today, it was shooting water, so nice. This is an outfield for a baseball field. So on Thursday, women's softball will be there, and it's used for our island league soccer and travel soccer practices. The Oak Bluffs field, I will say we did a full renovation of in 2018 for about $165,000. That included removing a totally defunct baseball field and installing a brand new irrigation system. So since then, this field has been getting a ton of use by all the travel soccer teams, including high school age kids. And as you can see here, this is the men's league, and they beat that field up, and it has been able to recover with the care that we're giving it.
Dottie, another quick question.
Yep, please.
How about football and lacrosse?
So
football tears up fields, soccer.
Yep. So the youth fields at the high school, the youth fields around the island are not used for football. That's all done at the high school fields. And same with lacrosse. Lacrosse used to use this Oak Bluff school field, and we were hoping that they would come back after the renovation, but they've gotten so used to being at the high school that they have stayed there. Interestingly, our high school field, which we do not take care of, but I would like to think because of a lot of the work we've done in the promotion of grass on the island, they have actually started to take care of that field, and the recovery of that field has really been amazing. So I do want to point that out. We also take care of some community fields, which it sounds like yours may be higher use, but this is the Chilmark School field, which is by a wellhead, so we can't use any amendments and doesn't have irrigation. And so our goal is to match what the field needs, and we fund it accordingly. Our most recent partnership is with the charter school, and this field doesn't look so good right now because it actually just got irrigation and it was super uneven, and they've filled in the areas and is getting irrigation turned on next week. So that's really exciting. A big thing to note is that not all fields are created equal. And so we really look to what the needs are of the field. But we end up spending about $5,000 to $20,000 a year on each field. The West Tisbury School field, which is what you see here, this year the investment's a little bit more because when they made that field many years ago, they didn't take the stumps out. And so every once in a while we get a huge sinkhole. And so we had to do some work to fix the sinkholes. So we really focus on a regenerative data-based approach. Healthy soil is the key. If that healthy soil is more resilient, it serves as a space for increased carbon sequestration and increased moisture retention. We also maximize our ground coverage and minimize our soil disruption, which are all a part of a regenerative approach. When we mow, we always leave clippings. We try to use local compost and other natural soil amendments, and we use a lot of slice aeration. We love this fact that each 1% increase in soil organic matter helps hold 20,000 gallons more water per acre. So we start with soil testing, and we take samples every spring. We work with agronomists to decide on what amendments we're going to use that year.
What's amendment mean? Is that fertilizer?
Mostly fertilizer, sometimes lime, maybe it's top dressing with some compost, any extras that you would put on the field. Mowing, we mow a lot. Mowing with sharp blades is really, really important. It promotes healthier root growth in the long run. And during high growing season, we mow at least twice a week. We understand this leaves a larger carbon footprint, and there are more electric mowers in the sort of environment now, and we're hoping to get a grant for one of those soon. We always leave our grass clippings because that helps create a healthier field as well because they break down. We do a lot of impactful aeration. It sounds like the field you have could use some better drainage, and so we have found that even using spike aeration has helped a ton. We got a grant for an aerator just like this, and it helps open up the surface area again to promote healthier root zone and drainage. Here it is in action. And then we also
you've got about 2 minutes to finish. So if you've
okay,
got some highlight, hit them quickly. Okay.
The highlights are we also ask for help, and so we partner with experts in the grass industry, sports turf specialists that's in Rentham. We have found that even a little bit of work to these grass fields makes such a huge difference. High quality seed, overseeding in 2 directions, getting it under the ground, getting it to germinate. That takes care of the weeds without having to use herbicides and pesticides. It creates a healthy environment for our kids. We're not over nitrogening because it sounds like there's a water source right near you. We fertilize minimally, but it makes a huge difference because we do it in a way with small amounts so that it's the uptake from the grass is not leaching. It's all getting taken up by the grass. And the idea is that we're not closing fields. Grass is not precious, but if you use it and you take care of it, it's there for you. It's also about training coaches. You mentioned football is hard on fields. It always uses the center of the fields. You set up your drills on the outsides of the fields. Every time I show up to coach, the kids know we move the goals. I pick the nicest part of the field and set up my cones to do the drills that I need. You're only using the goal mouth when you have to. Of course, there are challenges with everything, making sure your irrigation is working properly. But there are so many tools in the toolkit that you can do before turning to plastic is our goal. And so I understand this wasn't exactly the right time for this, but I hope that you guys at least can recognize that there are alternatives, and we are a community that has really been showing that that can work. So I welcome any questions you might have.
Dottie, thank you very much. You were very good and concise, and I appreciate that. Any questions from commission members? I can't see the screen, so I don't know if there are any other other comments? All right, Dottie, thank you very much. Is Chris, is he arrived yet? Kevin, do you know?
John, I'm just allowing him in.
Oh, good, thank you.
John, can I point out one thing about the field fund fields? They never close them for weather. They go in all weather.
Got it. Thank you. If you can report, if Dottie can said that she'd look for this information, but I think for park department purposes and not necessarily for us on the environmental side, but I'm sure that the number of hours of field use is a critical issue for Parks Department and Chris Huntress, who's now joining us. And also that, fertilizer, that's a big issue when you're that close to the wetlands. And I'm not just talking about Pine Tree Brook, I'm talking about the resource area between the brook and the field. But anyway, Chris, thank you very much. And you probably don't know what's been going on, but we started this with, I had a long-winded description of the scope of work that we've sent out for a consultancy to get both a hydrologist and an environmental chemist to assist us in 10 different areas. We get 10 questions that the commission members came up with. And they can kind of divide into 3 big silos. One is contamination. Are we going to increase the contaminant load by this project? Number 2, is there any way to remediate that? And number 3 is whether or not the temperature, well, I'm giving you the wrong numbers here, but 1 is contamination. 2 is heat impact. We don't want to dump hot water into a cold water fishery. And is there any way to remediate that? And part of the contaminant issue is also whether or not we could do a filtration system to get whatever PFAS and PFOS are there. Can we get it out of the system? And then the last one is with respect to whether or not in replacing the field, we're going to end up with a contaminated bed or the soils beneath the bed afterwards. But that's gone out to the consultants now for bids. We hope to have responses by February. I'm sorry, by February, by August. And so I also preface that comment by saying that at our last meeting, we learned that it was not feasible to get the field in place for this fall anyway. So we hope we're not slowing down the project by our consultancy. I don't think we are. And I think it's important that we answer those questions. So you may have some responses because the first one was, if there is a contaminant load that is a net increase, we were wondering, is there a way to remediate that with a filtration system? It could be expensive if it's on an industrial level, but if it's at like a home type level, it's workable, feasible. And I don't know if you know anything about filtering out PFAS.
there are systems that are out there. I'm not prepared to speak on it tonight, but.
Oh, and I'm not trying to, put you on the
Yeah.
spot at all.
Yeah, no, the systems are out there for septic removal on large scale projects. So I have not seen whether or not that could be applied. In relation to the turf field, what I can tell you, and I've said this before, so I'll go quickly on it. We tested your existing field and the existing topsoil for PFAS. We have those levels. We know what they are. We know that they are 10 to 12 times higher than any PFAS levels found in the synthetic turf. When we construct a field, one of the first things we would do is remove that topsoil, which would have a significant impact on a net reduction in PFAS. You can dislike turf for other reasons, but from a PFAS perspective, you will have significantly less when the field is in place. Having said that, I'm happy to continue to look at filtration systems or other things if that's the board's desire.
All right, well, I part of the number of 10 questions, I tried to kind of simplify it for you, but one of the questions, one of the individual questions really does relate to whether or not we're going to add to a contaminant load. And one of the difficulties we're having is that we're trying to mix water dilution with soil levels. And I can't do the math. We can't do the math. We need some help in terms of whether or not if, 3 parts per whatever billion in water, which is a dilution level, and that mixes with soil. I'm just making up the numbers, and the soil is 5 parts per something in the soil. What's the result? And we need some help in that area. So that's one issue on the contaminant side. On the side of the temperature control, we thought it might be possible to just have some kind of a detention basin underground, as we often do, and just slow the water down. So if it's too hot, it's a pervious surface, so it's going to go into the ridge drains and get directed into the pipe that discharges into the brook. Can we hold that back and just let it sit there for an hour, 2 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours, or a day, whatever it takes to cool it down to ambient temperature? So that was an issue.
The short answer to that is absolutely. And one of the benefits of a synthetic turf field is it can hold a tremendous amount of stormwater underneath. If you wanted it to hold more, as some of our clients do, because they may direct other things down there or of other situations that might require additional stormwater control, we can build a chambered system under the field that would effectively handle up to and including the 100-year storm event. So the only time that you would ever see anything hit the storm pipe would actually be during an event that was in excess of the 100-year or the 1% storm. And stormwater wouldn't, it would still get into the ground. It would get into the ground through infiltration and not the other way around. So I hope that helps, but certainly we.
Oh, no, it does. It does, because temperature is one of the concerns that people had. And the last one is when the mat is removed after whatever, it's 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. When it's removed, what's going on underneath the mat? Are we getting a higher concentration of PFAS or any kind of a contaminant? And if so, what do we do with it? Before you replace the new mat, do we have to, clean up the contaminated soil and get it to a licensed site facility, or what do we do? I'm not asking you, Chris. Yeah. I'm not trying to sandbag you here, but these are the questions that we've asked for help.
They're excellent questions, and I think your peer review will help you get them answered. We have not seen a level of contamination ever in a turf replacement that required removal of the stone subbase and disposal of that as a hazardous material. Never. And we've worked on project. We're working on one now that includes a turf replacement over a DEP certified landfill, and they're not making us do that to the material underneath.
Oh, okay, that's important. All right, thank you. That was, we wanted to hear you just so that what the background of the questions are. And my view is that, I think we've identified the issues. And I did precede this, Chris, by saying that everybody's well-intentioned, everybody's on the side of the angels on this one, whether it's athleticism or health. and protecting our kids. And everybody's heading in the right direction. So we just need some guidance on this. So we think we'll be able to make some progress. I don't think we'll have any answers in August, but I think we'll have identified the expertise that we need.
But Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'd like to request a copy of that RFP and those 10 questions.
It is. I sent it to Kathy Bowen, so she's got it. It's part of the public record. And I said this to the public before, and I'll tell you, we sent it to Tetra Tech. And I spoke to Sean Reardon at Tetra Tech back in June. And as we spoke, the scopes started to expand. I talked to Kevin Freitag, and he said, look, if the scope expands, then the cost is going to expand. If the cost goes up, you've got to put it to bid. So we sent out the RFP to 5 different entities. It was Tetra Tech, GZA, a company called AECOM, AECOM, and then some individuals, one Scott Horsley and one Michael Mobile. Both of whom have expertise in hydrology, but not necessarily environmental chemistry. So they might have to team up and do sort of a joint venture, so to speak.
Sure.
To get the expertise. All right, Kevin.
I can get that RFP through Kathy if I ask.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I can send you a copy. Okay.
Thank you.
And Paul, I've lost you there, but I can send you a copy as well.
Great. John, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. I've been having problems with, I'm looking at my screen. I'm afraid that my screen knows I'm just too old to figure some of this stuff out, but it's flickering, but I think we're back now. I just wanted to make a couple real quick points. The folks at the Sierra Club and Dr. Kyla Bennett, who we had in here before, they pointed out that yes, that you can take the top layer of 2, 3, 4 inches, 6 inches of the soil off, and there is a good bit of PFAS load there already. But actually, they found PFAS farther in the soil than that they've gone down as deep as like 6 or 7 or 8 feet and still found PFAS there. So it's not like you're going to be able to just sort of peel it off and necessarily get rid of it. The second thing I'd like to point out is that PFAS is bioaccumulative, which is why they call them forever. Part of the reason why they call them forever chemicals. So if you have PFAS there already, and you have other PFAS leaching into it, it's only going to increase the load. It doesn't become a comparative kind of thing. So those are just 2 quick points I want to make.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Kevin? Yes, sir. You're on, Kevin.
Yeah, hi. Just to backtrack on stuff here. Even when I was a park commissioner, before I'm park director, we spent thousands of dollars through STS down at that lower field. We've put in 2 new grass fields down there. They didn't work. We've done slice seeding, aeration, overseeding. We've done everything down there. So it's not like we don't like grass. It didn't work down there. And that's what STS told us. It just doesn't work down there. So it's not like I love turf fields. It just, in this location, it doesn't work there. I just want to get that out there. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Kevin.
Is that something you can provide to us so we can add it to the record? I mean, it would be very helpful to have that information.
Yeah, I will get all my records to you guys, what we've spent down there in the past. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that would, if maintaining a grass field is infeasible there and you have documentation to support that, that's something that absolutely should be in the record on this.
No problem.
All right. Todd?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I thought I thought you were saying something.
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have a
All right,
question.
Yes, Tom.
Kevin, do you know why grass is tough to maintain in that location, particularly?
I think the sports that are played there has something to do with it. Football, as John has said, does a tremendous damage to fields. It's low spot on the whole area down there. but we have spent thousands of dollars down there. And again, it's just not working.
Thank you.
All right, and then I suggest that the best use of time would be to await the response from the request for a proposal and continue the meeting until the 8th of August. And hopefully, I know that Tetra Tech at least is working on it this week, so I think we'll be able to make some progress between now and then. All right, so with the assent of the applicant, we'll continue this until, oops, I see two hands. Steve Keller, Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring up, well, first of all, I'm a resident and a town meeting member in Milton. And I wanted to bring up an issue that's still outstanding. I understand and I appreciate all the work that's been done. And I don't want to, but this issue was actually brought up by Mr. Van Lincoln at the last meeting. And it's regarding all the parking on the conservation land, both, and I can show you pictures. I did a quick, if I can share my screen very quickly, I can show you. It's on, it's Article 97, the conservation land. It's also on sidewalks, but let me just quickly share my screen so you can see a quick preview of this.
Does this relate to the artificial turf field, or is this a different issue?
Well, it's parking in the conservation land across the street, which, I mean, it was brought up at the last meeting. It was never addressed. So I don't know.
Oh, no, in fact, it was addressed, not only at the last meeting, but it was addressed at the site walk. And the plan, and Chris can support me or refute me on this one, but there's a fence that's going in there to prevent any cars whatsoever from either traveling or parking or doing anything there.
That's on the side of the road, John. That's not at the, that's at the side of the road. That's not.
It is.
Base.
Correct.
It's not at the base at the turnaround where the pavement stops and the transition to the path going to Pine Tree Brook is. So it's
but they already answered that question, Hans, and specifically said they'd put a gate there.
Yeah, we haven't seen any changes to any design plans. I mean, the plan that we have on record shows what it is. So, Mr. Huntress, I see you here.
Yeah, I'm not as good at raising my hand digitally, so, yeah, we do, to the chair's point, we do show a split rail fence along the edge immediately off the other side of the end of the synthetic turf field, and that driveway will be turned to a bike path. We did stop that fence at the limit of the 200-foot riverfront area buffer, because any work, as you know, even the installation of fence within that buffer triggers additional review. But we would be happy to live with a condition from the board that requires the extension of that split rail fence to whatever limits you deem appropriate to eliminate parking in the area. What I believe what the gentleman is referring to is parking closer towards Pine Tree Brook, which did come up at the site walk.
Mr. Keller, is that accurate, what we're talking about?
That is the concern. I mean, quite frankly, it's on the side, it's everywhere. I mean, from the Pine Tree Brook all the way up. And I know that is probably a commission on disability issue with folks parking on the sidewalk. So that's another issue altogether. But it is, perhaps I can look at the designs. I didn't realize it was in the designs to correct that problem. So I can request that information and look at it, further review it.
We'd be happy to work with the commission to resolve that issue.
Yeah, one thing that, you know, just to kind of finish the discussion on that, we don't want to impede if there's emergency access needed to go further down. We don't want to impede that. So, but if there's a way that we can prohibit, you know, cars from, you know, on a regular basis going through there. So if there's some kind of, you know, gate that can be, you know, controlled by, you know, emergency responders, then that would be appropriate. But you know, where I guess I call it the hammerhead at the bottom of the road there.
Just to quickly, the proposal does include a gate at the top, which would be a breakaway gate should the fire department need to get in there. And it does include leaving that hammerhead parking space the way it is presently, A, for turnaround, but B, for emergency vehicles should anybody need to get down there. But the balance of the pavement width is narrowed to about 12 feet and the split rail fence is put in there. However, the shoulders on either side of the 12-foot paved width, although there'll be grass, the sub base for the existing gravel roadway will be left underneath. So should a bigger vehicle need to get down, say an ambulance, it would be supported on either side of the road as it went down. It's not going to sink into the grass on either side. So we tried to, and we did talk to the fire chief about this to make sure that he was comfortable with it as well.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if I could ask one other question, and again, I don't know, I'm not an expert in conservation, but one of the criteria, or I would think one of the criteria, maybe looking at perhaps if we're taking down legacy trees with Lamb Woods, what would be the impact? What could be the future impact with the fields? I know many folks who live in Home Inc., they have flooding problems. I know many people in Pine Tree Brook have flooding problems, but I'm just wondering if that should be a scenario. And again, I'm not, by no means I'm an expert, but just the legacy trees in Lamb Woods, if they were taken down, well, I don't know if that would be perhaps if that should be a criteria. I'm just throwing that out. Again, I'm not an expert in this area.
We're not proposing the removal of any legacy. There's one tree that's being removed. It's on the slope headed up to the baseball field, and that would be in the location of the future viewing area. But other than that, there are no additional trees coming down as part of this project.
There was a town meeting. There was a town meeting though with taking down a forest of trees. That's why I just bring it up to the Conservation Commission. I know it's not. This is more the Conservation Commission question.
Okay.
Sure, but I can respond to that. I mean, that was approved by the Conservation Commission, and it was approved by town meeting. It's a different project. And when you said flooding at Home Inc., that's upland. I guess
when I'm like the impact of the water, that's what I'm concerned about with the field. I know we were talking about, at least what I heard the last meeting is that the field could saturate all that water currently. And my concern is that additional water from this, would that have any impact? And again, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I just don't know if that should be part of this.
Well, why don't we wait to get the expert? Why don't we wait to get the experts and then figure all this out?
Well, I just didn't know if we should put that in as criteria. That's why I was just throwing that out there.
Fair enough, Steve. And I think that we asked before about the design criteria for the drainage, and Chris's response was that the calculations have been made. But Chris, I'll give this to you. Would removal of trees on the other side of Guile Road? And when I say Guile Road, I'm talking about the section that goes down to Pine Tree to Blue Hills Parkway. Would that impact on your design calculations for drainage?
Not at all.
Because
it's outside of our watershed limit. We're not accepting water from that direction.
All right. Did you follow that, Steve? The watershed is a divide, and water goes in different directions depending upon elevation changes.
Okay. All right.
Those
Again,
watershed limits those watershed plans are in our stormwater report, which you have a copy of.
Okay, I can take a look at the report then. All right, I appreciate. Thank you again. This is
all right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Deborah and Liz, we've got. So Deborah, go ahead. Are you there? I don't see a Liz O'Rourke.
Yeah, sorry about that. It took me a second to get myself off mute. Hi.
Hi.
So this is Deborah Mulbauer, two very quick comments. One is, I appreciate Kevin's description of all the work Milton did to maintain those grass fields and bring them back up to adequate condition. But the fundamental issue of why this project is needed is because the field needs to be reconstructed. No amount of grass maintenance, no matter how good, no grass will grow there properly until the field is reconstructed. There's runoff issues that are well documented. The turf won't, if you just put in turf right now without reconstructing it, it won't work either. The problem is the fundamental basics that the field was put in improperly, and the drainage is structurally inadequate, which is what I've been explained. And so I think it's a little ingenuous to say, oh, well, we worked so hard on that grass, and so now we have to do plastic, because the fundamental structure of that ground needs to be redone in order for the drainage to actually work properly, in order for proper grass to grow and then be properly maintained. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is I appreciate that there'll be a barrier put up in the future if this project happens to not permit cars to park on conservation land. But right now, and for years, cars have been parking on that grass, not only on the outside, right outside of Guile Road, but they also park on other grassy areas down the brook as well. And I table this for another time, but there needs to be now, not waiting for the project. Now that I don't understand why there aren't no parking signs, because those cars drip gas and oil into the grass, which literally sits right next to the brook. So I'm not sure why the Conservation Commission doesn't have signs up there now for no parking, but for a future meeting, if you all could put that on the to-do list, because that has been a concern for many years, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah. Liz, are you still with your hand raised?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, I was going to bring up a lot of the same issues that Deborah brought up, because I know the drainage for the field has not been working for many years. And I would be curious for Kevin to tell us, you know, when. I will be glad if he gets those records to the Conservation Commission to see when the drainage stopped working for that field, because I don't think it's possible to maintain that field no matter what you do if it's not structurally draining properly. So
I think that's the whole design purpose that Kevin Huntress has submitted. That's the
Yes,
whole
but
idea of it, to improve the drainage.
Anyway, when the speaker prior was talking about grass fields, we're jumping right to plastic. There's lots of other options. I'm just saying jumping right to plastic should be the last resort. And I'm saying that the drainage didn't work. The reconstruction that was done before, it failed. So you couldn't, anyway, it just, and also I just wanted to tell Steve Kelleher, I agree. I don't think the parking here has been addressed at all. You're removing the parking. We don't like the fact that cars are parking down there, but where else are they going to park? And
No,
I don't think that has been addressed. So that's what I'm saying.
I understand that, but that's really not within the scope of this project proposal. The proposal has addressed it, but you and Debbie both, you know, and Steve too, you've all addressed a significant point, and I think we'll try to work with the Park Commission and maybe get some no parking signs out. It's an enforcement issue, really, and we don't. The Conservation Commission doesn't have any enforcement power to do anything. But
I agree.
We don't have signs, we don't have money to put signs in, but we will, I represent that we will.
Well,
work.
even if you were to put plantings so no cars could park there ever again, it's still, where are the cars going to park? Right now, they are parking all down Guile Road on the sidewalk, like Steve said. And so I'm just telling you, no one's addressing where the cars will go. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Liz, very much. All right, seeing no other hands raised, we will continue this until the August meeting. And at that time, we anticipate having the bids in and we can move forward. Thank you very much, all. And next on the agenda is Hillside Street has been continued. The request for determination of applicability, Brush Hill Lane and 0 Milton Ave. And I know we do have, where did he go to present on this one? Tom, there you are. What can you tell us about this project?
So good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Schutz from Goddard Consulting, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Dennis, who is also here with us in the audience this afternoon. So I am representing the property that's addressed as Brush Hill Lane and 0 Milton Lane in Boston. So the applicant is seeking the negative determination that the two isolated wetlands on the Boston parcel, because the site is split in half, is not subject to protection under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Milton Wetland Bylaw. So if I could share my screen quickly, just to
Sure.
kind of give some background, that would be great. So you're currently looking at the site plan for the parcel in question. This parcel is split between the two towns, Milton and Boston. So this large section down here, that is Boston. And then this small corner up here, that's part in Milton. On the Boston parcel, there are two small isolated wetlands, one being right here, and then another being down here. These are fairly small, this one being only about 647 square feet, and this isolated wetland being 1,044 square feet. So we had been in front of you in the past in 2022, and you were looking for some additional information. And we were also in front of the Boston Conservation Commission at that point. And the Boston Conservation Commission issued a negative determination based on evidence that we provided them and their peer reviewer, BSC, that these isolated wetlands are non-jurisdictional under the Boston Wetlands Bylaw and the Wetland Protection Act. This is also not isolated land subject to flooding. As you can see, this blue outline here is the flood zone, and it doesn't equal a 1/4 acre foot of water that these two areas can hold. So these areas are non-jurisdictional in any way under their bylaw or the Wetlands Protection Act. That being said, a 10 group actually appealed the determination from the Boston Concom to DEP, and DEP issued a superseding order, or sorry, a superseding determination of applicability, and they ended up agreeing with Boston Concom that these two isolated wetlands are non-jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. So they did not agree with the abutter group, and they agreed with Boston Conservation Commission. So it is our opinion that these two isolated wetlands are non-jurisdictional under the Milton Wetland Bylaws. They are not in the same town, and they are not on the Milton parcel. So we would like to open it up now to any questions from the Conservation Commission that I can answer, or any comments.
Sure, it's a legal decision, and isolated wetlands are jurisdictional under the Milton bylaw. So the question is, do we lose jurisdiction because it's in Boston? It doesn't from a technical perspective, but I understand the argument. So when this first came up, and it's got to be 6 or 8 months ago when we first considered this, I know it's been continued a lot, but I immediately went to town council and asked for an opinion. I mean, there's no question that isolated wetlands are jurisdictional under the bylaw in Milton. But because these are sitting across the property line, if it were not a municipal line, we always say that it doesn't matter where the resource area is. We could, for instance, have a vernal pool on somebody else's property, and the permit applicant is saying, well, that's not on my property. That doesn't matter to us at all. It's proximity, but I admit to you that that's all within the town of Milton, that we've confronted this over the last, well, 3 decades for me. So I would recommend that we get your assent, because we need to have the opinion from town council, or at least it's my position that we need to have the permission from town council. Now, there's a whole other issue there, that even if it is jurisdictional, does it matter? If we look at it and say it's, we could issue a negative determination because we make a decision that it has no impact on the resource areas that we protect. So there are actually 2 levels here, and that would be sort of the decision on the merits. But you've given us sort of the legal view that we don't have jurisdiction because the isolated wetland is across a boundary. It's on the other side of the property line. And my recommendation to the commission is that we await the decision. And obviously, it was quite a while. It was at least 6 months ago that I asked for it. And it didn't have a high priority, I guess. So I would like to resurrect that request for a legal opinion from town council. Other commissioners have a view on this? Because we get two levels here. One is the legal jurisdiction issue, and the other one is on the merits.
do
Any
have one
thoughts from
question.
commissioners?
Yeah, John, I have a question. So Mass DEP issued a superseding determination of applicability under the Wetlands Protection Act, but was the appeal on the Wetlands Protection Act, or was the appeal the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw?
I believe it was the Wetland Protection Act and the bylaw, if I'm not mistaken.
DEP can't issue a determination on a town,
No, I
on
can't.
a municipal.
Superior Court only. Chapter
That's my mistake.
38.
I'm looking back through my records right now. It looks like DEP just issued the superseding or a superseding determination of applicability under the Wetlands Protection Act. So they confirm that this is non-jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act, not the Boston bylaw.
Yeah, I don't know what the Boston bylaw says.
So the Boston bylaw regulates isolated wetlands if they're under a certain size, and these wetlands happen to be under that size. And this had gone through a peer review process as well with BSC, and we walked a lot with them, confirmed that the flags are correct and these are the accurate locations. So that's how we knew that they were under the size criteria for the Boston bylaw.
All right, any other thoughts from commissioners?
I could add something. The question occurred to me, what if one of these wetlands was in fact a vernal pool? And because Milton protects a 100-foot area from the boundary of a vernal pool, what if that 100 feet reached across the Milton line? Would we want to try to protect that area? So
Thomas, that was also part of the peer review process that took place in Boston.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I went to this site to see if I thought they were vernal pools, and the site is really heavily dug up. It is nasty to get around in because whoever dug it up left the big piles of dirt where they were. I believe at one time it was a covered reservoir for Boston. And in the meantime, all those piles of dirt grew up in whatever would grow, including a lot of invasive vines and stuff. So it's very hard to get around in. But I did find the flags, and I did find the wetlands. And there was no water in them. And it was very hard to tell that they were wetlands. They were very small as well. So it was immediately obvious to me that they could not ever be vernal pools. So that relieved my concern in that respect. And later I did look at the documents that were submitted, namely the original negative determination and the appeal and the DEP response and the BSC comments, I believe. And they all seem to me persuasive in the terms of a negative determination. So I know a legal question is still out there, but I would say I'm ready to put that aside and say, just on the basis of the physical conditions, that if we were to issue a negative determination, it would be a fact that resource areas of Milton will not be impacted.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I agree with Tom Palmer on this. I also want to note that BSC ecologist Matt Byrne evaluated the site, and we have used him as a consultant for the certification of vernal pools. And absent any vernal pool related determination by Mr. Byrne, I think that's a non-issue with this parcel.
Why do you think the Boston Conservation Commission disagreed?
They didn't. It was a 10.
The neighbors did.
It was a 10-person agreed citizen appeal. So this wasn't.
Got it. All right. Understood.
I've also walked that site a couple of times over the last couple of years before it came in here.
And I would agree with Tom and Arthur on that.
All right, Steve, have you seen the site?
Steve, you're on mute.
You're still on mute, Steve. There you go.
Yes, I have seen the site from the road and didn't want to step inside it for the reasons Tom described. But I also looked at the topography there, and those sites are really, really small. So I would agree with everything Tom and Arthur and everyone else has had a comment on it, including Hans.
Hans, and your comment is what?
I was just asking about whether the appeal was extended only to DEP or if there was an appeal on the bylaw. But it sounds
Right.
like, Mr. Schultz, it sounds like the citizen group has only appealed to Mass DEP. They haven't appealed to Superior Court.
Correct, yep.
Yeah,
So
but
it was
my-
more
my
an
question-
observation on my part.
Yeah, but my question to you is because I really didn't get into the merits of it, and this goes back, I don't know, the better part of a year when we first looked at it, when I first looked at it. And I have not seen it personally, but I will defer to others that if Steve has seen it and Tom Palmer has walked it, that's important. to me.
I've
I wanna
walked
know-
it too, John,
You did too?
twice in the last couple of years.
Okay, and Hans, how do you feel about on the merits, a negative determination?
I'm in agreement with everyone else, provided there's no other outstanding litigation on it. So,
With everyone else, meaning Tom and Arthur and Todd?
correct, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a weather report here, and I'm not, putting my finger in the air, saying which way is the wind blowing, because I'm a consensus-driven person, but I would only be hung up on the jurisdictional part of it. I wouldn't want to do anything that suggests that we do not have jurisdiction. But actually issuing a determination, whether it's negative or positive, I think is an exercise of our jurisdiction. But I'd be willing to go on the basis of people that have seen it. I didn't see any particular problems when I reviewed the project initially. But go back again to the beginning, Tom, you can help me. Boston said, approved that they issue an order of conditions for the project.
So there was no project filed. It was a request for determination of applicability about the jurisdiction of the isolated wetlands on their section of the parcel. And they issued a negative determination concluding that there was no jurisdiction under the Boston Wetlands Bylaw or the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act.
So it sounds like just an ANRAD as opposed to a notice of intent. If we don't know what the project is, Tom Palmer, what happens if they come in and build a skyscraper that comes into Milton? If we already said it's not we don't know what the project is.
Well, there is no.
Single family homes.
But there's no order, there's no notice of intent.
No.
This sounds like an ANRAD to me.
Well, I guess it technically could be an ANRAD if we had filed it that way, but we were filing just to confirm that there was no jurisdiction under the Wetlands Protection Act. There's no current project in mind. We're just confirming that these wetlands on the Boston section of the parcel are non-jurisdictional under the Wetlands Bylaw in Boston and under the Wetlands Protection
Act. I don't think I'm paranoid here, but we don't have a project. If we say that we have no jurisdiction, isn't that, it's an RDA? But we don't know what impact, what's going to impact negatively on this. I mean, do we have any other choice other than to say, no, that's not jurisdictional to us? That's what a negative determination would be, that we have no jurisdiction. Because it's not saying that the project is not going to impact adversely the resources which we protect. We don't know what the project is. Anyway, are there any, Dennis, do you have any thoughts?
Hi, John. The project is 8 single-family homes.
And are they going into the Milton area?
One of the houses will be half in the town of Milton. And 7 will be in Boston. Half of one will be in Milton, and the other half of it will be in Boston. It'll have a Boston address. Just the back of the house will be in the Milton portion. That's it.
Shouldn't we see a plan for that before a negative determination is issued? Because if you issue it without a plan, you're essentially saying we don't have any jurisdiction. It might be a great plan. It might be a good project.
But John, didn't DEP already say that they don't have any issues with it?
They're just saying it's not jurisdictional under the Boston bylaw.
Under the wetlands.
My position is it is jurisdictional under our bylaw. I'm not getting to the merits of it, whether it should be negative or positive. I'm just looking at the jurisdictional aspect of this.
I get what you're saying, John, and you have a point.
Yeah, and in fact, what we should ask is ask Freitag again, John, the same question.
I think a plan would be outside of the scope of our RDA that we filed. We filed this RDA to confirm that these isolated wetlands are non-jurisdictional under the wetlands bylaw in Milton and the Wetlands Protection Act in Milton, not that the plan or not that a project would have any impact on these wetlands that are on the Boston parcel. These would be, is there a buffer zone on the Milton parcel would be more of the scope of this RDA rather than is the project going to affect them?
See, that's my point. I think they are jurisdictional under the Milton bylaw.
But
I'm not even going to the merits of it. It might be a great plan and it has no negative impact. But if you're asking us, is it jurisdictional? The answer is yes. We don't have a size limitation,
I don't know,
by the way.
can they be jurisdictional if they're in Boston and this is under the Milton wetland bylaw? Because they are
That's the
not in your town. I think that going back to what you were saying about the town council, if you want to lean on the merit of them, I think that would be something that we would like to hear as well, because we do believe that these are non-jurisdictional in the town of Milton because they are not in the town of Milton. And they do not have a 100-foot buffer zone.
Yeah, that therefore my view is we should push town council for an opinion on that. This is not a
John, I
merits
agree.
issue. This is a legal jurisdiction issue for me. What's your time frame, Dennis? I don't want to slow you down anymore. I know you've been at this for a while.
Yeah, well, Boston is ready to approve all the permits, but we're waiting for the Conservation Commission in Milton to sign off. It's an as-of-right project. There's no zoning. We meet all the zoning requirements, setbacks, everything, even in Milton. So we're just waiting. The last hurdle is your commission here now, just to, if we get you signed off, we get our permits in the next couple of months.
Well, my preference would be to go to the town council, push him. And if he says, no, we don't have jurisdiction, then that would be the end of it for me. If he says, yes, we do have jurisdiction, then we get to the merits. And from what I've heard from Steve and Tom and Todd and Arthur, it doesn't look like there's a problem. And this is not form over substance, guys. This is legality over, I don't want to give up a jurisdictional fight without the consent of town council. So if we were to continue that, we'd have to have your assent. But if we were to continue it until August 8th, can you live with that?
Yeah, I can live till that, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to add that if we do not hear from town council by August 8th,
we vote on it.
That we act on this.
That's fine.
John, we have been.
I'm not changing my vote.
No,
just so you don't misunderstand me.
Not at all.
I'm a legal guy. That's where I come from. All right. So with the assent of the applicant, that will continue this until August 8th, and we will vote on August 8th. Fair enough?
Okay, fair enough.
One more
Great,
note,
thank you.
if I could just mention something else about this site. I think I understand why the neighbors wanted more attention, because one consequence of tearing up the site like that when that reservoir was in there is there hasn't been any soil development on most of the site. Plus, it is steeply pitched toward the adjacent residential lots. So I think those abutters were concerned that during cloudbursts, sheets of water come down the hill because there's just no soil to absorb it. So I don't blame them for wanting an improvement in conditions. And I think they could get that if the project is done right. On the other hand, your jurisdictional issue seems very real to me. In other words, if we were to agree that there's no jurisdiction, we would never see the notice of intent because we had already said it. We'd have no ability. And so I think your issue, you were correct to say, let's not give away jurisdiction until we know we don't have it.
All right. Based on that conversation, we'll continue this until August 8th, and we'll take a vote on August 8th. All right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Good night. That gets us to the minutes. Any edits, comments to the minutes? Anybody read them? Sorry, they're so long, Steve. Please, please. See if you can shorten them. I'd make them more general.
I was trained by research scientists, John. And I've always had that issue when I face lawyers. Lawyers never want to see my detailed minutes. No offense.
You are
no
correct.
offense.
All right, well, I think we need to read them before we approve them. So that goes to August 8th. Additional business, and we do have some. Steve, what do you have?
Yes, I have a few just notes of things. Number one, we had a pre-construction meeting last week recently at Turner's Pond, and the erosion controls are in, and I did send some pictures around that
Yeah,
were
thank you.
sent to me. Okay. Number two, we had an inquiry from Unquity House at 30 Curtis Road regarding some work they would like to do on the stormwater system on site that dumps water directly into the Neponset River. And I suggested at least an RDA to them. And I think I wrote that to you, John.
You did.
You may.
And I agree.
Okay.
And I agree wholeheartedly.
Good, okay. Number three, 1 Elias Lane. I had a call from a tree company who actually asked me if they should file something before cutting trees next to another isolated vegetated wetland on the back portion of that property. And I said, yes, RDA, because I went there, saw a swale that was filled with water and said, yep, that's probably locally jurisdictional, but not connected to anything else. So it's probably not Commonwealth jurisdictional. So trees cut, we'll need some paperwork, cut down that is, and trees trimmed. I said, no, we don't need paperwork. And number four, as you probably know, if you live next door to them, like Mr. Hans does, the ice house buildings are down and the tree cutting has been started. And so far they're doing a clean job, in my opinion.
Yeah, not entirely. There's a bit of a problem, Steve. So
Okay.
in order to get the tree clearing equipment, they've had to use a number of low boys to get it in there.
Yes.
Where they turn around to get in the right direction, they've now created, they've basically destroyed the sidewalk, which is right up against the wetland. It's completely trashed. It's I don't know if this is a DCR issue or which probably ultimately DCR issue, but the tractor trailers have they're too big to do the turnaround, and they've now sunken in like
Oh,
it's,
gee.
yeah, someone needs to drive by it. It's, and
Last week, they had some material on top of the sidewalk as they were moving out, but I have not been there this week.
so it's the first turnaround beyond the, you know, beyond, so on the side of Blue Hills Parkway going towards.
Yep, beyond the north entrance, right?
Yeah, I would look right around, what's my address, 400 Blue Hills Parkway.
Sure,
Actually,
okay.
But no, it's, and I don't like to make a big deal on it, but you know, this
Yeah.
one's a good one. They should have thought ahead before they took the fourth low boy in there and completely wrecked that. So
Can you go back on that, Hans? When you say it was completely wrecked, are you talking about at the sidewalk? If you're looking at the driveway to the ice house, is it to the right?
no, it's not at the driveway of the ice house. So when you know, Blue Hill Parkway is divided in the middle.
Yeah.
So in order to, if you're going in the opposite direction of Blue Hills Parkway, you got to turn around to get
Got it.
to drive further down back to the ice house. And so
Got
you take a full length, you know, trailer that doesn't have the ability for the turnaround. It goes outside the road, and then you put the weight on the outside of the road on which right up against the wetlands. It's all soft, and now there's some significant damage to the road there.
Well,
Thank you.
Simple enough. You just tell them to bring all the trucks in from 28 or 138 and come down the Parkway straight.
Yeah, it would have been
That'll resolve it.
smarter approach, but now we have the damage that needs to be fixed. So that's, and so
They'll fix it, but if you gotta notify them, someone's gotta
yeah,
call.
someone's got to let them know. So I figured that's why I was
Yep.
letting Steve know to.
Sure.
Yep, I'm sure they'll get on it. But yeah.
I had to know about it. Thanks very much, Hans.
Yeah, otherwise they're doing a great job. So there has been some issues with site security there. People taking advantage of the lack of a fence, but that's up to.
Taking advantage of what?
To manage. The site's not fenced in, you know, I mean, there's a fence in the front, but I think that's.
I'm sharing my screen. Maybe you can see it. See it there?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
There it is.
That's looking through the gap in the gate between the two halves of the gate.
Yeah.
But the fence is pretty intact along the street. But you're right, you can go in the backside. And I don't know what you get up to when you're in there. What are you talking about, Hans? That has been damaged of some kind?
It's not on the site proper, Tom. It's not.
There's a view of that fence.
Yeah. So.
And the damage to the sidewalk you're referring to is somewhere down the road, right? Where the cut through is?
Much further down the road, yes.
Yeah, and that's been a perennial issue. I mean, there's been big holes and ruts in there for a long time because of that problem.
I'd take a drive down there and see what it looks like now.
Has it got worse?
So, yes, it's been torn up for a long time. It's not something that I'd usually bring up, but it's now been it's been hit hard by this. So
you do get puddles that last and last in those ruts.
yeah, Tom, I live there. I look outside
He
my
sees
house
it
all the time.
Yeah.
So like I said, I wouldn't bring this up if it wasn't like worth bringing up. So
Well, how do you want to follow up, Hans?
I would recommend just having Steve having a conversation with the site crew.
Sure.
Since it's
Sure.
right. It's full of water. It's mucky soil. It's probably right in wetland buffer, even though it's kind of a delivery. So it's kind of weird. I mean, we could go through the town, engineering department, but it'd probably be easier if we could just kind of circumvent that and have a conversation without getting DCR or anyone else involved.
Agreed.
And make it easier for them to just fix it and move on with the project.
Yep.
Is the hope.
Yep. Good. I will report back at least at the next meeting, if not before. How's that?
Sure.
Perfect, good, thanks.
On one other piece on additional business, there were a few people that did bring up a good point about signage on the conservation land adjacent to Guile Road. If there is any follow-up that's worth happening there, there are signs in other parts of the Pine Tree Brook that talks about no motorized vehicle use there. That sort of indicate that it is conservation land. So having signage at the application would not be the worst thing in the world. But I think I'm a biased person when it comes to that being a butter.
Maybe I can comment on that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We have several locations that have already been forwarded to the DPW, and Tommy McCarthy and his crew will be working on those. Two on Holland, one is down on Elliott. We've also asked a town council, John knows this from a couple of emails for determination as to the viability of putting signs up since the action that was taken by town meeting on the multiple conservation lands, Herrick Drive, School Street, Randolph Avenue, along Blue Hill Parkway, and so on down the line. So we're chasing that down. I haven't heard back since the pre-4th of July inquiry with the director of planning, but I will get to him tomorrow and see whether he has something more on that. And I'll talk to Nick Milano, John, to see if he can shake the tree with town council. Are you going to talk with him about this issue of the last item on our agenda so that he chases down town council for a decision?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The August
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I've
you know, we
talked
have
to
those
my-
signs. We have about 4 of the signs have been already determined for locations. We have 6 more signs to go, and you're right on target, Hans.
And Arthur, isn't one of them on Guile Road, but at the other end, Hans? It's on the Canton Avenue side. Isn't there a sign going in there?
Yeah, so I don't think the Conservation Commission signs, the signs indicating that it's conservation properties would be the right fix for this, for that. I mean, this is really a no parking, because this is where the pavement ends on Guile Road, or on the path down to Guile Road Field, which stops, and the path starts to go towards Pine Tree Brook. Cars, it's wide enough for a car to
Okay, yeah.
to drive on.
That's not our land, though.
It is conservation land.
It's conservation protected. But it's not deeded. That was a big issue with the land swap.
I thought that land is part of the Pine Tree Brook taking, which was given to the Conservation Commission.
There's an easement that the town has on that the town owns on either side of the brook. But I believe that's park department land, deed wise, as opposed to conservation land.
Going up Kyle Road on the left-hand side, that is my recollection.
Oh, no, we're talking about 2 different areas. I'm down by the bridge going over to Blue Hill Crescent. I mean,
Okay.
I'm down by the bridge. And
So if you're going toward the crescent from Guile Road, are you talking about the parcel on the left-hand side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. That's park department.
That's my recollection as well. But
So
we
maybe
can
that's
check
a
it out.
request that we put into the park department. Land.
To say no parking, or this is park department land or something.
I don't know. I guess at this point, it's really not clear whether or not. One would think that being, conservation land, whether or not it's owned by the Conservation Commission, that you wouldn't want.
See
people-
that sign?
That's the sort of sign I'm talking about.
That's on Pine Tree Brook, but just across the parkway
Yeah,
on the Post Pond side.
Yeah, but that is conservation property.
Do you remember, John, when Ann Sheffield told us that Milton hasn't designated any conservation lands in 1978?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, that really is an issue besides having signs. There's also the issue of actually saying on paper that land is conservation land, which Milton has not done any of for like 45 years or 50 years.
But
So
that's
somebody's-
Arthur's, that's exactly Arthur's project. That's what he's
Yeah,
doing.
well, yeah, that's, I guess, another half of it. I just wanted to refer to that other half of, there's putting up the physical signs, and there's also getting the parcels sorted out.
Can you hand me can you allow me to take control of the screen really quick?
Yeah, let me stop sharing here.
So I can show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that sign could read Park Department property as well as conservation property.
Yeah,
So here's where I'm talking about. So here's the field. Here's the Gunnell Road field. Here's Blue Hills Parkway. So here's the access way down. Right
Mhm.
here is the area I'm talking about. And what happens is the cars pull in here and they park along this area in here.
They sure do. Yes.
So John, that's what I'm referring to.
You know, I know that.
Okay,
I know that.
I just want to make sure we're clear.
There's a town easement that runs along the brook. But you see to the left-hand side where that hockey stick appearing plot is. With the cursor, keep going to your left. Go to the left,
along the parkway.
along the parkway. Keep going.
This?
Keep going.
Keep
Oh,
No,
this right here.
There it is. That's it. That's what I call the hockey stick. That's conservation owned. That's deeded to us. But the land up at the corner where the pathway goes and you're concerned with the parking that you showed us, that's Park Department land.
So it's interesting because this is not being, so if you click on this for info, it doesn't show it being owned by anybody.
Right,
This parcel here is owned by school department.
schools, that's right.
This parcel here is also school department, even though.
Yep. You're right.
So
We were doing all kinds of plans to flip-flop land between parks and school department.
And so what you're saying here is that this along Pine Tree Brook. So this area that I'm trying to click on that doesn't show up as a parcel.
Correct.
Who owns that?
The town.
The town.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I guess the
Really
request
true,
is to,
using
And
ASCII.
it may be the town of Milton for general municipal purposes without being
Yeah.
deeded to either the Park Department or the Conservation Commission. So that's maybe something that we should look into. In all candor, over the past 2 years, in looking at the land situation, it really has not been an easy path to meander. Steve and I spent some time on it, spent time on it with other administrators in the town. And
Yes.
it has never really been properly cataloged, classified, defined. Allison Quinn did a great job when she was on the planning department getting it started. But some of the designations are by hearsay, or the town took the property and it said it's for open space, but it didn't say.
didn't give it to
Who
an
owns it?
entity. Yeah,
That's exactly right.
and so to
I
go back.
think that's what you run into here.
Yeah, so to go back to my previous point of where the issue is with the turnarounds. So here's the ice house. And so here's where the vehicles were turning around. And so it's this spot right
Mhm.
here has now been, it's just big. So,
Yeah, just tell them the trucks have to come in off 28 and turn on to the Parkway that way, or 138.
yeah, so down the road,
That-
yeah,
that-
down the line.
That lot might be conservation land.
That's kind of why I brought it up.
Yeah. You could put it there, but to stop the trucks from.
It's owned by DCR, the Parkway, I believe.
Yes, it is.
Parkway is, but the land is divided between the town for general municipal purposes, and that one is right there is conservation, I believe.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up.
Within jurisdiction.
So,
Not,
Yes.
no, not
Okay.
just jurisdiction, it's deeded,
Right, there's no reason why a sign can't go up there.
correct?
well, separately, let's talk to Mr. Bosworth about having his deliveries come in a different way, otherwise to, so it just doesn't get it worse, make it worse, so.
Correct, all right. Yeah, that sounds like a simple path of least resistance. All right, so Steve, you're gonna lead the charge on that. And
I
Arthur,
shall.
you might want to consider a sign, when we get extra signs, you might want to consider one there. For
Absolutely.
conservation.
In fact, we had land on this. Was that one of the old land properties?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and in your list of signage locations, Arthur, am I correct that a sign is going at the corner of Canton Avenue and Guile Road?
That, right, that has already been marked and I flagged it. And I requested it of Tommy McCarthy in the DPW. And that's about a month ago. And he said he'd get a screw on it as soon as they can. I know they're down several staff. And it's summertime right now with vacations and so on down the line. That's not to make excuses, but that's just the reality.
Yeah. And just for the, I don't know if it's for anybody's benefit, but I rode my bike down to Turner's Pond on the 4th. And I went over to see the John Cronin bench, which is beautiful and it's beautifully located and it's misspelled.
That's right.
I can't believe that.
They left an M out of commission and the replacement bench is in progress.
Oh, good.
And I think we'll do with the old one is just turn it upside down.
Yeah.
I checked and use it in another location on the pond.
Recycled bench.
Absolutely.
Thanks for following.
We're New Englanders, aren't we? One and all.
That's right.
Yeah, it could be a sidewalk.
All right. How about other additional business? Steve? Nothing?
None here.
Arthur, you've got one, Arthur.
Uh,
The CPA, CP
Just-
committee?
Yeah, did you want to mention your 3 first?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so last week or whatever day it was, the 6th, I think. I made a presentation on 3 proposals that were approved by the Conservation Commission to the Community Preservation Act Committee. The first one was the proposal for $100,000 to fund a conservation restriction on 6.8 acres of land on Blue Hill Avenue, on the condition that the purchaser of the land would agree to accept our $100,000 or whatever money we could get to do a conservation restriction that is also conditioned upon public access. And the landowner that's at least bidding on the land she offered $1 million for the land and she was turned down. The price went up from 2 million to 3 million, and now it gets worse because the seller, which is the Carr estate, is now putting the 2 parcels together. One is 3.1 acres on Brush Hill Road. It has 2 homes and a barn on it, but that's for 4 million. The 6.8 acres of open land that Tom Palmer graciously walked and described and took photos of. That's 6.8 acres. That's on sale for 3 million. But they want to sell them together as a a package of 10 acres. And that is problematic for us. The other curveball that we knew was there is that the school building committee took a look at that land as a possible site, an alternative site for a school. They've had several, at least 2 public meetings there on site. And this is just colloquy stuff, overheard at public meetings. This is public stuff. This is not some secret, knowledge of people whispering, but public meeting. Consensus seems to be that it's not a suitable or not a viable locus for a new school. The reason is that when you put in the 250-foot zoning setback for a school, the 400 feet becomes 300 feet. And it's basically too narrow for a school when you combine the width, limited width, with the elevation change, which I believe is 110 feet. That's a pretty significant elevation change. So it doesn't appear to be that. I've talked to a couple of folks. There's going to be a meeting within the next 2 weeks of the school board, school building committee. And I think that at that time they will vote on it. That we can't, prejudge what they're going to vote, but it looks like the consensus is to vote that it is not a viable alternative for that. Now that's important because the the Conservation Community Preservation Committee asked about that, and they asked also whether or not it's a suitable site for affordable housing. So that there are lots of people competing for this, but our proposal is in, and it's based upon the value of open space combined with public access. So the proposed purchaser has committed to public access with a trail in and through that land. So that's pending. The second 2 proposals, 2 and 3, were both at Pope's Pond. One is to connect where the location of the bridge is estimated to be, connected to the trail. And it's about 400 feet. I talked to Chase Berkeley. He said it's going to cost about $40,000 between. He said the personnel is free. He'll free up his people to do it, but he said materials and equipment, it's probably going to run about $40,000 to put in a defined trail, make sure it's sufficiently supported. And so that is in. It seemed to be well received since it was actually proposed by the Community Preservation Committee a year ago when we got the bridge approved. And that will be coordinated also with the Beverly Park Playground Committee that has a design proposal for the playground. The third proposal, and I talked to Pete Jackson about this one, is to do, as they're doing at Turner's Pond, to have a handicapped accessible I was corrected, I said circumnavigation, and it's actually circumambulation. So I adopted that new term at the request of the Community Preservation Committee. So to create a path that would sustain a wheelchair, just as Charlie Gamer and Pete Jackson did, 10, 12 years ago at Turner's Pond, and it's now being rehabbed some, dozen years later. That, and I confess this because Pete told me that's a very, very expensive project. But what it will require is a design and, sort of a concept proposal first. And with the landscape architect and the professional engineers, he thought that would be about $40,000. So we applied for $40,000 to do just that. The reason that it needs a design proposal is because there's so many exposed roots, trees in the area, and I'm particularly on the side of the Blue Hills Parkway side behind the houses. There are lots of exposed roots there, and it would have to be elevated enough so as not to cut into the roots, but it would also have to be done so as to, and not choke the trees. So that would be that's the third proposal. That those have been presented under consideration, and Arthur's got the next one.
And how did your conversations with the CPC go on those two?
Oh, I thought they were well received, but the message was clear that 6.8 acres is not, it's not just open space that they're looking at. And I think Tom Callahan is on the Milton Trust for Affordable Housing.
Correct.
And he said right away is that, and so did Cheryl Tagayas. She said, wouldn't that be a site for affordable housing? And I said, that's a legitimate social goal, but open space is the best tool that we've got for fighting climate change.
And tomorrow at,
State is important.
tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'll have my conversation with the CPC on the Milton and Ponset River Estuary project. That was in the packets for the last meeting that you all saw and endorsed along with John's 3 proposals. And that's for those of you who are not familiar with it, the estuary that's opposite Pope John Paul II Park. This land was taken by the town in 1963 as open space land. It does not appear to have been deeded. The Conservation Commission work needs to be done on surveying the land. There's I hike it periodically. There are indications of unintentional encroachment on what might be the open space land at a number of locations. And then ascertaining what the wetland delineation would need to take place. There is an upland determination that was done around the turn of the century. So a lot of things have changed there. There's tremendous hiking and recreational and other possibilities in that particular valuable part of Milton's ecological background. Quincy has done a lot of work. The city of Boston did, the state did, under the old MDC. Milton was identified as a partner during those processes, but it did not apparently act along with the other 2 communities on moving forward with what they did. So it's an opportunity for us, and we'll see if people are interested. But the big point right now would be surveying, wetland determination, and then looking at partnershiping with other entities like the Ponset River Watershed Association, the City of Quincy, et cetera, and possibly having some seed money that could be used for grant applications.
All right, thanks, Arthur. And we'll report back, obviously, as soon as we hear from the Community Preservation Committee. Any other additional business? If not, I sent everybody a copy of that scope of work. And I listed the people that I sent it to. And I know it was difficult to listen to just the words to follow the questions, but those questions came from various members of the commission.
Very well done, John. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll see what we get back by way of proposals and costs. I'm sure between the select board and the park commission, they're not going to be happy with, paying the fee to question their project, but I think they're fair questions. And I also think it might be resolvable. Again, it may depend upon cost, but that filtration system, if we can figure out a way to take out any PFAS that we're putting in, that would make this a no-brainer and cool the temperature as well. But that one seems like an easy fix, cooling it down just by holding the water back. But we shall see. All right, anything else? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. All right, thanks, guys.
Good, 10 o'clock, great.
Pretty
night,
good.
Good
All
night,
right.
John.
Good night, all.
Good night.